Welcome to Prime Suspects for your weekly insider's look behind the counter of Prime Sports. Alongside Joe Brennan Jr. and Adam Bjorn, I'm your host, Matt Landis. Today's topics, the football weekend that was for Prime, plus a look at baseball's postseason so far, Circa eyeing new states, including California, and a look ahead to the NBA season, which tips off next week. Guys, starting as always with the latest from inside Prime Sports, NFL Week 6, a field day for favorites from start to finish. Joe, I know we typically reserve this segment for Adam, but we're going to come to you first, as did Fox Sports betting analyst Patrick Everson, leading his recap by quoting you lamenting the Week 6 results for the book. And that was before Chase Brown twisted the knife on Sunday Night Football with an otherwise inconsequential 30-yard touchdown run coming out of the 2-minute warning to swing to cover to Cincinnati when they'd already all but locked up the outright win. Put Week 6 for Prime into perspective for us.
I mean, I'm already down on the ground, Matt. Did you really have to keep swinging? You keep beating me down here. It was a tough weekend. It was a tougher weekend for everybody in the U.S. sportsbook world. So, congratulations to players. Players got to win. It's good marketing. While it might have been a tough weekend, we're still in for business. And we march on. But yeah, it's funny. I remember a few years ago, somebody was the CFTC, which is currently everybody's thinking about it in terms of the betting on elections. But they had commissioned some research, and I helped out a bit with it. And what they wanted to know was what were financial risks to the marketplace. And the number one thing that all the old school guys, like the Vegas guys, talked about was the day that all the favorites won and covered. And Sunday got really close to that. And the reason was for excess parlay risk. And so while we were taking a pretty decent pounding on our book of business, I wondered just how, geometrically worse it was for the Fan Kings crowd, simply because, I would imagine their parlay exposure, which is significantly higher than ours, had to really put a damper on things.
Adam, building on that notion, I'm inclined to think that it wasn't as bad for Prime as it may have been for a lot of other books, given the sharper crowd that you cater to. That tends to mean a little bit more action on underdogs. So from your perspective, anything to add when it comes to Week 6 in the NFL?
Yeah, no, I mean, NFL football was good on Sunday for the pregame stuff. As expected, favorites win. That's good for us on that side of it. Again, won in New Jersey, lost in Ohio as a overall week. But most of the damage was done live because there was no swings like the week before where we'd had, favorites that got up big and then ended up getting beaten. Generally, when the favorites just rolled out, that's where a lot of the damage is done. Again, we've got a few players that are just laying these big favorites at short prices once they get ahead a bit, and all those just collected. So pregame was good, live was bad. Overall, the week, wasn't as bad as what it could have been for many other books. But it was more on the live side. And again, the single bets and just a few players in particular and the way they play. Again, we need more players. We need more liquidity for everything we're seeing right now. We're on the right track. The Albers are doing the Lord's work in New Jersey as they should be, which we need to lean a bit more into in Ohio, I think, and educate the players and show them that there's some, watching my terms carefully with the responsible gaming regulators and whatnot. I don't even know what the word is. I can't use free. I can't use easy. There's some money left on the ground for those to pick up.
All right. Well, Adam, shifting gears, but sticking with you here, the Major League Baseball playoffs are in full swing. The Yankees hosting Cleveland tonight, looking to take a commanding 2-0 lead in the American League Championship Series. The Mets hosting the Dodgers tomorrow night in a pivotal Game 3 of the National League Championship Series. What stands out from what you're seeing so far this postseason?
Again, the games have been fairly balanced. There's a few players that I get, definitely arbors that are playing in. It seems like some of the pricing from some of the books is flip-flopping as, they go from one side to the other versus, it should be a fairly seamless shift into game-to-game sort of aspect. But, we need liquidity. We're not getting a ton of action on the baseball playoffs because there's not generally the edges that there are in the regular season. This is more of a recreational time of year for players to play in the playoffs. And that's definitely something that we're seeing as there's volume, but it's not the volume that's getting us excited.
Joe, I think one other factor that could be limiting Prime's liquidity specifically for the baseball postseason so far could be that you were unable to book the Detroit-Cleveland American League Division Series in New Jersey because of a market access agreement tied to Tigers ownership. You posted on Twitter that this dynamic had you pulling for Cleveland, and they have since come through for you. So now that everything's back on the table in both Prime states, what are you watching for?
As Adam said, this is more recreational time of the year. It's the narrative piece that's going to drive the people participating in the market because there's no real great edges for the pros to be able to exploit. Hopefully will be good for us since you have, several really huge market. You have both New York teams. You have the Dodgers in there. Cleveland's the smallest market team. Obviously, they're a good narrative when you look at their payroll compared to the payrolls of the other three teams ahead of them. But the bigger the teams that are in there, so if it could be like, Cleveland would actually probably be a bad result for us if they were able to prevail over the Yankees. Probably the best result for us, I'm going to guess, would be an LA Dodgers, New York Yankees series. And then after that, a subway series between the Mets and the Yankees. But yeah, right now, everything's going to be narrative driven. And while you have a big public team like the Yankees in there, you can always hope for better things.
All right, guys. Well, from inside Prime Sports to the Prime of the West, if you will, our water cooler segment this week, per an October 10th article by David Danzis in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, stemming from an interview with Derek Stevens at G2E, Circa, eyeing new states, including California. Want to explore a couple topics with you guys, as well as a couple quotes from this article. Leading off with some topics, Joe, the article touches on Circa's retail success and some of the challenges of translating that to the mobile experience. What's your point of view on where retail and mobile success can overlap, but also where they can diverge?
I think one of the things that you see play out in that article is the Nevada experience of mobile and retail is very different from the rest of the country, the rest of the world, really. I understand Derek's comments about, for instance, having players visit the property in order to be able to open an account and post up for a mobile account. When you're in a state like Nevada, which is so hyper concentrated in Vegas, and then to a smaller extent, Reno, in the rest of the state is a desert that's owned by the United States government. There's nothing there. So it's hyper concentrated. So that's one reason why that model has continued to exist. It's also, Derek's not the only one in town who champions that model. It's actually more reliant on guys like the station's casino guys, the Fertitta brothers, because that's a locals focused casino. There's still a pretty major sports betting operation there with all of their properties have always done very well. They're also very much in favor of that, got to come to the casino to post up and register for a mobile account thing. That's not going to work anywhere else. When he mentions California in particular, California, it's vast, it's spread out. All the tribal casinos, while they may be spread out, they're not territorially protected the way like Pennsylvania when they started their brick and mortar casinos, where there's a kind of radius of exclusivity around each of the casinos in the regions. Then they spread them out just enough where those casinos have a natural feeder market that's close in by them. I mean, in California, there's a lot of places where you'd have to drive by a casino to get to another casino. And in that way, it's more like New Jersey than it is like Nevada. So while everybody is interested in California, we would be interested in what we would be able to do in California. The California tribal casinos, particularly the big tribes, like the Agua Calientes, and so they're actually going the opposite. They're buying into Nevada. Derek's operation is kind of small by comparison to a lot of those big California casinos. They don't really need the Nevada companies. They don't need the big brands. They can do this all under their own steam. They seem quite determined to do so and to do this on their terms, and they're not in any hurry to do it. So having an incongruous model like the one that Derek is suggesting, and then with the home field advantage that the California tribes have, I really don't see a whole lot of upside for people as anything other than B2B suppliers there.
All right. I think that in-person versus digital registration dynamic going to be a recurring theme as we weave through this segment. But Adam, I also want to come to you when it comes to the technology component of all this. Stevens makes it clear that he wants Circa to refine its tech before expanding. And especially given your background and maybe from a Planetech point of view, What do you think this tech update is going to look like for bettors, and why do you think it's necessary for the book before expanding any further?
Funny enough, this is a conversation Derek and I had over Fireballs probably 2 years ago, where I was trying to pitch what we were doing with the tech, building it out and owning our own tech stack. At that time, they were sitting on stadiums, and I think they were sitting on IGT in Colorado and a few other things. For us, again, you have to do it. You have to have that tech stack. You have to have that control. Now, for them in particular, they've gone out and purchased a source code of, I believe, Stadiums, which is the one they're sitting on, trying to redevelop it. Having been part of the development of that technology, a decade ago, I think it still has some restrictions on what they're truly going to be able to do and compete in the market space as they build it out. But they're definitely heading in the right direction. The other aspect of it is, they're not getting the traction in other states that they've got in Nevada with, the world's largest sports book at their fingertips where they can drive that traffic. Retail versus online. In most of the world and outside of Nevada, generally it's less than 2% is going through the retail aspect. In Nevada, they are, again, closer to a 50-50. Some places are still 60% retail and flip that over either way. It's a different animal there. But the in-person registration and that's just trying to kind of protect what is there now. You open that up, then you don't have to have the ability to drive them to a certain location. And that's not going to work in other states. And I think there was some comment about people won't invest without the in-person registration because job opportunity. That's all horseshit. It's just a matter of putting jobs in other places. Instead of having to go to one location, you could employ 100 people to be at 100 bars across the state and, enrolling people that way. There's many ways to do this, and he's really sort of getting on the right track with one of them, owning a tech stack and really trying to get the states you have now right, which is exactly what Prime's looking to do, is get the states that are open right before looking to expand into other states or go beyond and, lean out over your skis. But on the other side, the in-person registration, I'm totally against that. I think it should be open. The technologies we have now with KYC and all those other aspects, the only way that you can truly compete with that unregulated market is to make it as accessible as possible, like that unregulated market is for people. And that is being able to register anywhere with your ID through the KYC, selfies, all that technology that's available right now, and making it as easy as possible for the people. You don't want to have to get them in their car to go somewhere else when they go, screw it. I don't need to get in the car to go bet with a Bodog or someone like that. I just sit here and do it right there and then. The whole concept of doing what PASPA did, the regulating of the markets, is to be able to give the frictionless experience for everyone in that regulated market. And Nevada hasn't done it to this point.
So, Matt, one other thing I want to say on this is it just kind of shows the provincialism of the thinking. It's not just Derek. It's mainly the Nevada view of the world. And it's this, their buildings obviously are the center of their universe. And, foot traffic into their buildings is the thing that they just have so much cultural and institutional memory about. Like, this is how we do business. This is how we get people into our program. This is how we make them customers. Versus what the rest of the world is caught on to is, especially something like this, you have people that are paying money to become part of your players' database, right? How many other places do you get that where somebody will pay money to become part of your CRM database? And it just makes you wonder if you do things, the sign up in person and the brick and mortar location thing, like just how much smaller your database is going to be because of convenience versus it'll be vast. Even people who don't deposit will sign up for your app. Unfortunately, we see too much of that with us, people signing up in other states. But the tangible good there is that you just get more people. You get like 10x, 20x more people that are become part of your database, and everybody in this industry and all industries, that's what they want. They want to be able to the more people that they can get and have embedded in their database so they can directly market to, the more successful they're going to be.
All right, well, I teased a couple of quotes to dive into when setting up this segment, but I think you guys have covered it well when it comes to the in-person versus digital registration dynamic, as well as how that may play out in terms of Circa considering a potential presence in California down the road. One final question as far as this segment's concerned. guys, to play devil's advocate just a bit, I wonder what an increase of digital registration permissions could look like in terms of the bookie better relationship over time. I think of somebody like Jeffrey Benson at Circa and their whole team. They really are known for having exceptional customer service for anybody who's been there and experienced it firsthand. That said, I also know that Prime, having a much more digital footprint, also well known for top of the line customer service. So where does that all important bookie better relationship come into play when you evaluate the in-person versus digital requirements in this whole dynamic?
Well, I think you just summed it up right
jump
there.
ball. You answered your own question, right? Right? I mean, you're like, they're really good at booking at the counter, and we've got, people who are like dialing in, chatting in, everything like that, telling us how great our service is best in the industry, bar none. So I don't know.
Adam, I don't know if I cut you off there. Did you have anything else to add?
No, it was really, again, you'd sort of answered your own question, and then Joe sort of tapped it in and good to go. But yeah, it's all that now is understanding the lay of the land, understanding the rules of the game, understanding what your goals and objectives are at the end of the day, as they do. I mean, we couldn't do an in-person experience like they're doing because they have a massive machine behind it and plenty of screens and a great place to have those conversations. Ours is more like this over a Zoom or a Riverside or whatever it is of general phone call, being able to communicate that as well. So that's sort of the dual aspect of it, the old and the new. That's kind of where it lays down, is the old school versus the new school, and we're trying to ultimately bring that old school into the new world and doing it differently, whatnot. It's also the aspect of there was no one in person registering for the last 2.5 decades offshore, and it seemed to have worked out pretty well for them. So again, it's just whatever aspects you have, whatever tools in your shed you have, and they have a great tool. Why wouldn't you want everybody to come there and get the experience? Because then, there's generally people that want to go back there every Saturday or Sunday or baseball World Series and that, to have that experience in that environment, whether inside or outside. So they're leaning into what their best tool is, and we're leaning into the tools we have. Give me a sports book like that, and I'll be wanting people to come there and sit there and have a drink with them as they're putting their tickets through the machine or the window.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like all you got to do is look at the games that we offer action on. There's like I used to be a Philadelphia Eagles season ticket holder. There's 65,000 people in the Lincoln Financial Field and watch the Eagles live. But there's millions that watch the game on TV, streaming on mobile, streaming on their OTT box, all those things. The future's digital. That future. It's already digital. You reach more customers, you reach more people with your stuff. And bookmaking is no different from sports in that you just have more customers inherently. You imagine the number of people that would not watch an Eagles game if they had to first go to Lincoln Financial Field, drive there, buy a ticket, park, go to the game. If you're an out-of-town fan, get shouted at for your stupid jersey. Why did you wear that in our building? And then you could go home and watch on a satellite television or on your mobile phone. The ridiculous model. So I think the sooner Nevada gets over their provincialism on this thing, it works there in Nevada. It's not going to work anywhere else.
One more loose thread I'd like to pull on with you guys when it comes to this bookie better relationship. I think we made it clear, given what Prime devotes to customer service, what Circa clearly devotes, very important on the book side of it. From the bettor's perspective, especially a lot of bettors who may be working with books that don't operate on a model similar to Prime or Circa, how would you recommend building a relationship or doing anything in the way of best practices to maintain account longevity, making that experience as cordial and fulfilling as it can be, knowing that a lot of bettors now, if they don't have that type of relationship, don't also want to be put on too short of a leash, like a lot of other books may place them on in today's landscape?
Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult. I even reposted something yesterday about a guy that was down 9,000 with Caesars, which was doing exactly what we welcome and what our success is in New Jersey right now, the arbitraging aspect. Now, again, it makes sense that they identify that that's what they're doing and they don't want that type of player, and they limit them or kick them out. But it's really difficult to understand how these operators are operating or what premise they're operating under and why they're not building these relationships. Obviously, they're building them with the VIPs and the people that they believe will lose so much money to them that can put them in, diabolical strife. And they're as friendly and as catering and whatnot to those people as possible. And then anyone else south of that, which is sort of 98% of the rest of the market, they just really don't care about. It's really weird to watch, but it's happened, around the world well before PASPA was repealed. And it's just sort of been put on steroids like most things in the US. It's really bizarre because it's only going to take one of these places to really change your MO or bring someone in that can just kind of strip out the shit that's in there and put in new philosophies. And it could be a game changer, but none of them seem to really either want that or understand that to ultimately what they can do to drive up their market share.
All right. Well, from a segment, guys, giving a deep dive into the possibilities of a book like Circa having a presence in California in the future, to another topic that's top of mind for a lot of bettors in the Golden State. Our look ahead segment this week, the Lakers hosting the Timberwolves in the second game of a doubleheader set to open the NBA season 1 week from today, before most teams across the league get their seasons underway next Wednesday. Adam, what noteworthy NBA action are you seeing so far, and what do you expect to see between now and the season tipping off?
Again, generally the futures aren't one of our big driving markets. You got Oklahoma Thunder and Boston that are seemingly the clear favorites to this point. Even surprisingly, the Knicks being very short priced as well. But there's money coming in on the Kings, Golden State Warriors. There's a sort of a bunch of teams around that 30 to 1 to 40 to 1 that are getting action that seemingly, people have interest in at least getting to the finals and playoffs and being competitive. NBA is such a grinding season. For myself, I really haven't taken so much notice of it in the beginning of the seasons. Usually there's those big trades during the seasons and whatnot around All-Star break and things like that, and I'll get a bit more involved in that. I know they've sort of tried to change the dynamic of the season with the, in-season tournaments and things like that, but it's such a grind of a sport. If you're playing NBA with any real conviction, it's a day in, day out. I'm sure there's lots of nuances that people are still getting into of like how many days on the road and which game on the road, the travel times and things like that. I'm not sure how much are really following the refs these days. And I remember meeting the first NBA bettor in the 90s in Thailand that used to know how the ball bounced on the backboards and the wood of the different courts. So it's a grind of a season. That's all I can say. I guess I've said it enough. It's really just put those numbers up, expect that the bettors will have some advantage in the early season as they adapt quicker than what the numbers do. It's just, you don't stick your chest out in those first few weeks. You just watch it, you try and balance the books and see who has the information and just slowly lean into it as the season goes on.
And Joe, one question for you here related to Adam's point, perhaps about the Knicks being maybe a shorter price than he would have anticipated. What expectations do you have with this being Prime's first full NBA season in New Jersey?
I think it's not only New Jersey, but just broadly, it might be more of a macro trend in that I think everybody who could find a way to begin to make inroads, whether it's the touts, handicappers, pros, would-be pros, syndicates, or anything. NFL it has been really well covered as far as those who entered the marketplace when it became legal, regulated here. And the next big pot of liquidity out there for them to bet on is going to be NBA. So my expectation is that year over year, the industry should see a lot more growth in NBA because that whole cohort that came in and was so fixated kind of stereotypically on football, NFL, they've done that. The sharper ones have also kind of mined college football as well. And so my expectation is you're going to see a lot of those folks now start to make this a year-round thing or as close as they can by getting, seeing a little more force, a little more liquidity deployed against NBA. I think for us, though, based on our results last season, when hoops start, the one that's really going to make a difference for us is going to be college hoops. We had a little bit of a tough season with that. I hope somebody split the atom on whatever it was last year with college totals because that seemed to be a problem area, not only for us, but for everybody in the industry. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when that comes on. But my expectation is it's going to be kind of like watching the antelope pass its way through the python, is that you're going to see sports begin to kind of get this, a wave of liquidity as one market matures. Other people are going to be looking for opportunities in others. And that is probably where the NBA is positioned this year.
All right. Well, to the audience, from the NBA to the college ranks, however you're planning to attack any basketball betting opportunities, you better believe it's a slam dunk that we appreciate you making us a part of your week. Thanks as always, and we'll catch you next week right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.